Hey, we're here today with Brian at Tailwalker Lures, and he's going to teach us how to rig up your trolling lures and catch that big marlin.
Thanks for visiting with us today. Today we're going to talk about double hook rigs and single hook rigs and how we're going to rig them in your new Tailwalker lure. Today, basically, we're going to start off with your stainless steel hooks. These are stainless steel 10-aught hooks. We've got your 700-pound 49-strand cable. You've got your crimps, or your crimps. They're going to be copper crimps to match up with your stainless steel cable, and then your heat shrink, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to start off with a piece of 8-inch 49-strand cable, stainless steel, your crimps, and then we're going to also show you how to measure the back and make sure that this hook set gets in the back where you want it to be at the bottom of the skirt and the mid-skirt. So you start with your hooks, your crimps. Take your crimp, you slide it on. You want to make sure it's nice and snug. Kind of see there, nice and snug. Okay, then we start off with that first hook. We bring it around, slide it back in. We want very minimal coming back out the back side. We bring it in and we want to leave a little bit of play with that hook. We don't want to cinch it down really tight. We want to leave a little bit of play, and we'll fix that up later. Next is another crimp. Get a few of those out. Take that crimp and slide it on. That next hook, this is important. We want to make sure that how this hook lays, because we're going to do a 180-degree offset. We want to make sure that hook is opposite as a 69 version, I guess, in a way, of how the other hook goes. So we'll slide that on there in a different, opposite way. Pull that crimp closer, and this is what I'm talking about by opposite of each other, just like that. Okay, and the reason we do that is when we fold it back, it turns at a 180-degree offset. The one thing that's important to remember is that your crimps line up. This crimp is upright and that crimp is upright. And that will help you do a 180-degree offset when you flip it around like this. So now once we're ready to crimp, we actually take it over here to the bench crimper, or we can use hand crimpers that we have available to us. You guys may be able to buy something like this in the store. The double jaw here like this is very easy to get the crimps in and work this out. I'm going to show you, we're going to do the first one with the hand crimper. I'll find the correct hole for it. You want to slide that crimp in upright and vertical, and right there close to the edge, a little bit left over at the edge. Crimp down nice and tight. And then we're going to do the same thing again close to the other side. And this is the way it should look. And then what we're going to do is the other side, we're going to do that with the bench crimper. We'll slide that in. The good thing is with the bench crimper, it does it all in one swoop. Nice and tight, ready to go. Okay, so the next thing we've got is your heat shrink tubing. This first one, we want to make sure it's right the length of the hook, so we're going to trim this off the shaft of the hook. We don't want to come up too far on the eye. I'll trim that off a little bit. Slide this piece over. We want to make sure it fits over the eye snug, and then slides down over the shaft of the hook. This last piece is going to be a little bit longer. We've got to run it over the back of the hook, or the front of the hook. Slide it up, cover the crimp, and come down the shaft of the hook. And we created a stiff hook rig. The next thing we want to do is heat shrink. It's important to hold the hook position how you want it when you shrink it, to make sure that your hooks aren't turned one way and then cause it to spin, the lure to spin. So you want to make sure and hold that nice and straight.
So Brian, I always have trouble getting my shrink wrap to shrink all the way down tight on my cable and my hook. How do you accomplish that?
So what we do is, if you want to, you can actually cut a smaller piece to add to your line. So right in here you can cut that smaller piece and slide it in. We can slide it in right here and bring it a little tighter. Or you can actually get a proper heat shrink tube. These are really close. They get pretty tight. A 4 times heat shrink tubing would work well. These are actually 3 times heat shrink tubing. 3x.
So they make the heat shrink so the percentage reduction is different in different variations.
So you can get a 2 to 1, you can get a 3 to 1. They make even a 4 to 1 heat shrink ratio.
Awesome.
Ooh, watch your fingers, because that gets hot. And it's important to kind of hold that hook there for a minute to let that heat shrink kind of settle down, because if you lay it this way or that way, it's going to do the same thing. Once that thing dries, it's actually going to mess up and cause a problem, and then it can cause your bait to spin. So that one's ready. Okay, so we're going to go back and we're going to do the single hook rig. This is kind of what it looks like before we shrink the tube. So we come in, we grab our 10-0 hook, our stainless steel cable. This is 700-pound, 49-strand cable.
And you mentioned using copper sleeves.
Crimps. You want to use copper crimps over aluminum crimps, and the reason being is because it creates a corrosive problem between stainless steel and aluminum and causes a problem where it starts to corrode. This copper does not corrode like that. So we take it, wrap it around. Want to make a big enough loop when you go in your first time, because a lot of times guys have problems when they cut their cable. If you don't have the proper tool to cut the cable, it makes a big problem. So we use cable cutters. And these cable cutters cut off a nice and smooth cut. So we get that nice finished edge at the end, that factory edge.
So you end up with stray pieces of stainless steel sticking in your thumb when you put your lures together.
So we make a big loop like this, and we come back around, slide it in nice and easy, have it extend there like that, just out the back. And then we take the other, slide it in, nice and kind of snug. It's not really loose. You want to make sure that you match up your crimps to your cable or your mono that you're using. And we pull that. Want to make sure that we leave a little bit of loop like that, and the reason being is you don't want your chafe tube from your mono binding up. If you pull it really tight, it causes a problem, and the hook doesn't do what it needs to do back here in the back. It may stick out one way or stick out the other, so we want to make sure and leave a little bit of space in that loop so that hook does what it needs to out the back. Just push it in. Make sure you want to make sure that you don't have your end way back here in the back, and then you miss that crimp when you go to crimp it, and then you lose that big fish. So make sure that end is sticking out slightly. You don't want to have it sticking out too far, because then you end up with what John said, the wire in your thumb or whatever, and it does not feel good. So let's see if we can get another piece to operate the way we want it. Sometimes moistening the chafe tube will help too. This one's just a little long. Okay, no problem with that. So here's one that's already done. Give you an idea, we've got one that's already in, ready to go. So now all we have to do is heat shrink this piece. Want to make sure, if you notice, the shaft of the hook is here, and the eye of the hook is right here. So we slide it down over the shaft of the hook, and we want to make this a stiff rig. We want to cover the crimp and then cover part of the shaft, and what that does, that keeps that hook from moving one way or the other, however it wants to do. It keeps it as a stiff hook. So then we heat shrink this one the same way we did the last one, and then you end up with a finished product that looks similar to this right here. So this one's ready to go.
Cool.
Alright. So now that we've got your hook set made, Bill fishing or marlin fishing, a lot of guys are bill fishing guys tend to use single hooks. Some guys use double hooks. It's a personal preference. Depends on your hookup ratio. A lot of guys say my hookup ratio is better with a single hook rig. Some guys like a double hook. Some guys like it 100 or 180 degree. Some guys like it 90 degrees. So it's one of those personal preferences you guys have to work out yourself. Fishing over time, there's no right answer. It's just what works best for you on your boat. Run your mono through the front of the lure and out the back.
Nice mahi look there.
That's right. It's a billfish killer. So that's ready to go. Set that aside. You take your double hook set or your single hook set, whichever one you prefer. Your crimp and your chafe tube protector. You slide your crimp on. You want to make sure our edge is cut nice at an angle. We're doing that with scissors instead of dikes because the dikes actually leave a flare on the end. We slide that crimp sleeve over. The chafe tube right over after that.
Stainless steel on the chafe tube?
Stainless steel chafe tube, that's what we use. Some guys use the green chafe tube. It's actually a coated stainless steel. And we slide our hook set over. Leave a little bit of space. Slide it up in there. I slide a little extra, and then I take my pair of dull dikes and give kind of a flare cut. And if you notice, this leaves a flare at the end, and what that does is that prevents from pulling back through the crimp. Okay, slide that in back over there, and then we pull tight just like that, and that's how it should look. Okay, and then we come over to either the bench crimper or the hand crimper. We can use the hand crimper, use the proper one. I come over here to the bench crimper. We slide it upright in the right position, right away from the edge, crimped and ready to go, just like that. The next thing we do, some of you guys prefer your hooks to ride a certain way in a lure. So the good thing about tailwalker lures is we have a hook set in the back. You can actually run that chafe tube or that crimp tube, the crimp sleeve, up inside that lure exactly how you want this hook to run. So if you want this hook upright, or if you want the hook down, you want the hook out the side, you can actually tell that hook how you want it to run on that lure. You slide that crimp tube or the crimp sleeve right up inside the hook set, and that stays exactly where you want it every time. So then your lure looks like that right there.
Beautiful.
Some guys prefer to trim their actual skirt off a little bit and leave that hook out the back. It's personal preference. I like a little bit of hook showing, not too much. Within rules of regulations, I think it's supposed to be within the actual hook, so the hook can't extend further than the any part of the hook can't extend further than the skirt. So just like that, that's a single hook rig.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate all the guidance.
Absolutely. Thank you.